Today, I want to talk about finding inspiration when the carousel just keeps turning. I think many of us have potentially started to feel a little stuck. I know I have. The entrepreneurial journey is almost like a roller coaster ride in many ways. I wouldn't exactly compare it to a carousel because it's filled with ups and downs and highs and lows, often in very short increments of time. And then at some point, maybe we get off of the roller coaster and we do go to the carousel and it feels monotonous. I think for many of us, particularly if we've navigated some of the initial growing pains in business, we may feel like we are on the carousel and it just keeps turning. So here are my thoughts of really maybe just getting off of the carousel and maybe walking around and looking for something else to enjoy on this proverbial playground. And firstly, I think we need to rediscover the why. We need to get the distance to gain perspective. Take a step back and reconnect with why we did this in the first place. Reminding yourself and rediscovering those initial emotions and the excitement and the thrill that drove you to make this big leap is really energizing. I also think it's important to embrace continuous learning, to admit that we don't know everything, even when we've become more experienced, and committing to learning at least one new thing that can improve the business could be a game changer. One new thing, if it's a big thing, maybe breaking it up into smaller pieces, or one new thing in a more regular context, maybe once a month. Seek inspiration outside of your industry. Sometimes the best ideas come from the strangest places you would never have thought to go looking. Collaborate and network. Look for like-minded people. And even better, look for like-minded people who are smarter than you are. You shouldn't feel like you're the smartest person in the room. You need to look for another room then. Innovate within constraints. Now, I love that one because it's so South African. Or actually, it's African. It's proudly African. Why? Because we have an ingrained culture to make something from nothing. I grew up in a house where my grandmother could make something from anything. Till this day, when I cook dinner for my family, I often don't shop for produce that would make something special, taking a recipe with me and then I purchase. I often just buy what looks fresh and looks good. And then once I have that, I create something from what I have. And I think that thinking in business allows us to say, how do we improve as opposed to just adding new stuff all the time? How do we work with what we have? And then I think this is the most important one for me. Celebrate the wins. Even if the wins are relatively small in the bigger scheme of things, celebrate them. Say it out loud. Have the team celebrate them. I often chuckle when I hear different reasons for why you start a business. And I think particularly when we are in this space where we kind of feel stuck, it's kind of monotonous because it's leveled out at a certain point from a revenue point of view, from a brand awareness, culture point of view, etc. Things become very, the same every day. And I think once we're in that place and we hear the reasons why people start businesses, I love the one where this youngster told me, oh, I want more freedom. Now, I wasn't the wet towel in the conversation. I could have been, but I wasn't. I smiled. Because the reality is, it's a bit caging, right? The roller coaster looks to the outside world to be extremely exhilarating and free and carefree and the thrills of the highs and the lows. Because when you're low, you will go up high. What goes down must come up, right? We think this when we are on the outside. But once you're on the roller coaster, you realize that it's actually a bit of a gilded cage in many ways because it challenges you beyond your wildest comprehension at the point of making that decision. It's often like having children. Those who have had children smile when new parents say all these beautiful things about what they think it's going to be like to be parents. And those of us that have experienced a little bit know it's the toughest and most stressful experience you'll ever have because you're responsible for how another human turns out to a very large degree. The responsibility is mind-boggling. And although it's something beyond our comprehension at the outset, at some point we realize how big it is. And then we realize that from a business point of view, that roller coaster is actually a bit of a cage. And we need to establish this plateau, which in turn could make us feel like it's monotonous, in order to have the freedom we may have desired when we did this thing at the start. So, I want to challenge you today. I want to challenge you that if you are feeling that the carousel just keeps turning, it's the same thing over and over, get off the carousel, go and look around in the playground and implement rediscovering your why, embracing the continuous learning. Look outside of your carousel and maybe even this particular playground. Look at collaboration and network. Get to know new people, in other words. Innovate with what you have and celebrate even the small wins.